hello to all those of you who've been able to join today. Mark Davison, the FD at Syrinix, which is a global market leader in providing network solutions to utilities companies. Mark's worked in a variety of industry sectors and brings broad experience of management and leadership. So today he'll be presenting on the restructuring finance department, which will be followed by the question and answer session and an opportunity for people to raise sort of points of interest, discussion, etc. So with that in mind, I'll hand over to Mark.
Thank you, Lewis, and thanks everybody for joining. So there's 30 plus people here who thought it would be better to listen to me than sit out in the sunshine, so this could be awkward. But I appreciate everyone joining. Thank you very much to listen to me waffle. So bear with me while I just share my screen. So hopefully everybody can see a PowerPoint screen, but not my notes. Is that right? So this is just going to be me talking about some experiences I've had in restructuring the finance department. It's not meant to be about me giving a lesson about how it should be done or giving advice, but I would give some advice, but not actually linked to this topic. So my personal circumstances have changed from when I was asked to do this presentation to now. And the advice I would give is, if you work from home, you're alone most of the time, and you're just working and you're doing a lot of meetings and presentations, and for some reason you think it would be a good idea to get a puppy, my advice is don't. Right now I have a puppy that could just take the squat position and there's nothing I can do about it. I just have to carry on presenting. So that's my only piece of advice I'm going to give throughout this presentation. So in terms of what I'm going to be talking about, I'm going to be talking about restructuring the finance department, and there's 4 elements I'm going to be looking at. There's restructuring to change from an underperforming finance department to a performing department. The importance of values and recognition, along with development of colleagues. Restructuring to change the perception of the finance department so that it becomes one that is value adding. And then the last piece, which I haven't got too much to speak about at all, apart from one experience I had, is managing global finance departments from the UK. So I was at a company whose name I won't mention. I joined as a group financial accountant, and I worked in that role for a year. So it was just myself within an office of about 13 people, and I just had no direct reports. I just reported to the group FC at the time. So I was involved in the separate activities of the department to everybody else. But the good thing about that is I could just watch everything unfold. I could see the culture, I could see the frustrations, I could feel the negative atmosphere, I could see things going wrong every single month at month end. Information was being produced late and inaccurately and all the rest of it. So I was just able to watch, but not actually doing anything about it. And then a year into my role, I was offered the role of Group Finance Controller, which effectively meant taking on everybody that within this department, about 12 people, 13 people in the UK, and then I think there was about 8 people globally. And I said yes, but I knew straight away that I had to change the department very rapidly because of the culture that was already ingrained, and it was just, it's toxic and not a nice place to turn up to. So the first thing I did was I took everybody off site for a meeting. So I hired a meeting room, hired lots of food, and basically the reason I took everybody off site is because it was within a business where it was acceptable to be in a meeting and for people to come in and ask to speak to someone, or you'd have colleagues on their phones, or there was just too many distractions. So that's one reason I took everybody away. But the second is the main topic was changed. So by taking everybody away straight away, that was the change, to show people that I was serious about changing the department. And then the third thing is it also made people feel a bit more valued, that I was willing to take them out of the business, to talk to them seriously, to invest in a meeting room, invest in some food, and to listen to people. So that was the first part of the change. And then in terms of what the meeting was about, it was about values, which I'll come on to in my next slide. It was about the department structure. It was about how we were going to change. And the tone was set very early on from the beginning, where it was the only time I was serious in this meeting, was where I said to everybody that now that I'm in charge of the department, there's just two qualities that I'm looking for in everybody. The first quality is capability, and the second was attitude. And you can't have one, in my opinion, without the other. So capability was all about technical knowledge. So we had management accountants who I'm getting a bit of feedback from someone. You can put me on mute. There we go. So first, we had management accountants, but I could see that they weren't technically or capable. So they didn't understand the fundamentals of double entry. They were posting things wrong, which were creating problems at month end. Things were being posted to the suspense account to hide them. It was just not very good at all from a capability point of view. So that's why capability was so important. And the second was attitude, in terms of, were they motivated and positive, or were they negative and toxic and spreading that within the department? Were they open to change, or were they stuck in their ways? And it's actually easier to have someone with the right attitude but not the capability, because you can train capability, but you can't have the other way around. So basically I said, this is what we need: capability and attitude, and if not, then we're going to be managing you out of the business. But at the same time, I said we're starting a clean slate. So it was all about, if you've not had the right attitude, I've seen why for the past year, and we're going to work to help change that, but I need you to give me feedback. And capability was all about developing people and putting them on training courses. So after that kind of serious bit was out of the way, and I'd managed everybody's expectations in terms of, sorry, I'm just going to mute somebody. There we go. And after I'd managed everybody's expectations in terms of what I'm after, it was then over to them to listen to what they felt the issues were and had been over the past couple of years, why there was such a toxic atmosphere, why the department wasn't performing. And that was done in two ways. The first is we went around the table and everybody openly shared how they were feeling, but not everybody was confident in talking about things. They either didn't want to say it because they felt it might seem negative, or they just weren't comfortable speaking out loud. So the other exercise we did was got everybody to write on a post-it note their thoughts and just stick it up on a board anonymously. And you can imagine from some of these post-it notes what some of them could have said, and that was certainly an eye-opener. But again, every single comment, no matter what it was welcomed, because that was the whole point of the exercise, is listening to people. And then the last thing we kind of talked about was ensuring everybody understood the purpose of the finance department. It was surprising how many people within the team, when someone else from another department would come to them to ask them to do something, they would roll their eyes at doing something that was actually their job. So I had to emphasize that the finance department for me was all about supporting the business. So if someone comes to speak to you, it wasn't about just carrying on your work and ignoring them or not giving them that eye contact. It was about turning to them and saying, how can I help? And to give an idea of how bad the culture had got, when I was working at this as the group financial accountant, and I was querying something with one of the colleagues, I asked this person a question, and his reply to me was, and I'll paraphrase, it was, what the F do you want now? And that's how bad it had got. And I can always reflect on this to think it was that bad that a colleague thought it was acceptable to speak to someone else like that. And it was right in front of their line manager at the time, who didn't do anything about it. So that was part of the problem of how it had been allowed for the culture to get this bad. So that was what I was trying to change. There was other things not on this slide that we changed. We changed the way we produced the information. So it was like taking a Six Sigma approach, where it was all about root causing a problem rather than just fixing it by posting a journal. We had monthly social events to start building the team, building the relationships between everybody, and get them to realise that, yes, it's a hard, stressy environment, but actually outside of that work environment, everybody's a human being. And after that, people started getting on well, interacting better, and helping with teamwork. And the other thing we did was improve the communications and relationships between the finance department and other departments. It's simple things like, I'm sure you've all seen examples of this, of where maybe goods weren't being received, so a supplier invoice couldn't be processed, and it would just cause a bottleneck of work at month end and no end of accrual. So it's just working with other departments and getting them on board with what they need to be doing, rather than accepting the failure of other departments to be acceptable and creating problems internally. So if I just move on to my next slide and just talk about values. But before I do, just to say the output of all of this, was we improved the accuracy of the figures we were producing to our group company, our parent company. We improved the reporting and analysis information that we were giving to management and directors. The accounts were reduced from being produced in 10 working days down to 6, in line with group deadlines. And we just supported the business decision making and became more value adding. So all of these things slowly improved. I have to say, out of everything that I did, the thing that really made the difference was, I go back to saying that it's all about the right people and the 2 key qualities that I asked for, which was capability and attitude. So we had 4 management accountants, and within 3 months, I'd replaced 3 of those management accountants. And it's quite difficult, because at the time, when you're such a busy department, and I'm sure many of us are guilty of this, it's easy to accept that that person is doing that job. And the thought of getting rid of someone, bringing someone in, recruiting them, training them, the disruption it causes, sometimes seems worse than just putting up with that person. But actually, when we changed 3 out of the 4 people, it was complete light and day. We had people coming into the business that were motivated, didn't mind putting in the extra time when it was required, and didn't moan about it. They were engaging in social activities outside of work to build relationships. They had the capability to do the work, and they were keen to learn and develop. So that was the biggest thing. And probably the summary of this slide is, if you've got people that aren't right because they can't do the job, or they've got a bad attitude, it will spread throughout the department, and you've probably seen it. Do take that leap to manage that out of the business.
Sorry, Mark, can I just jump in? Sorry to interrupt.
No, and thanks for interrupting, Julian, actually, because I meant to say at the beginning, if anybody wants to interrupt, ask questions, do it in chat or wait till the end, please do. So thanks for prompting me on that, Julian. Go ahead.
Great. I think maybe the issue that I was just about to raise has just, I think it's just been fixed, but I was stuck on the previous, on your first slide, but now I'm on the one that says importance of values and recognition.
Okay.
Yeah. So it's okay. So please continue.
Good. No, thanks for interjecting. That's good. Yeah. So talking about values, the business I was in at the time that I was just speaking about didn't have any values. Now, I must admit and throw my hands up, I did not realise the importance of values until I joined one of my employers, Norwich City Football Club, where, because it was very much a team. I hope there's not any Ipswich supporters on here, by the way, but because it was very team focused, that spread throughout the business. And we had a really good, effective CEO who understood values. It was lived and breathed every single day. It would be raised in meetings, it would be on the walls, there would be HR exercises implementing it. And that was the first time I thought, geez, these are what values are. This is why they're so important. This is how it can really be the culture. Whereas previously, I'd worked at places where maybe values were on a website, but that was it. It was purely a tick exercise as you join and they say, here's your values, but didn't really understand them or what they were. So I couldn't introduce values to the whole business, but I nonetheless introduced them to this department where I was trying to make the change. And I've listed some here that I've introduced: accountability, communication, continuous improvement, develop knowledge, professional and proactive. Now, there's loads more out there. There's integrity, collaboration, trust, empowerment. There's so many if you've done your research, but actually it's not so much important about the values you introduce, it's more about how you introduce them. And once we got these ingrained within the department, that's how the culture really started to change and the department became effective. In terms of how we done this, so it was always in our weekly finance meetings, these cultures for the first few months. I was continuously starting the meeting with asking, can anybody name our 6 values? And I kept doing that until at least every single person could do that. The second way we did it is obviously we had posters everywhere within the department, just reminding what the values were. We had one-to-one feedback where we would give feedback to people if they weren't demonstrating values, but actually we asked people to feedback to us, the managers, do you think we're not demonstrating the values, and to give examples of that, because it's not easy for everybody to demonstrate values 100% of the time. And then something else that actually worked quite well was, and to help with recognition and colleagues feeling valued, is we done this monthly award. And what that was either myself would choose or the whole team would take a vote on who would demonstrate a particular value. So one month we might say, right, we're going to do an award for continuous improvement. And then everybody in the department would vote for a colleague that demonstrated that. And that was a great way of actually trying to get people to engage in showing these values. And in terms of what that award looked like, I think we gave everybody a trophy that got shared around once a month that said team player or something to that like. And then we also gave them a gift, and that might be an Amazon voucher or a spa day or something that we thought that person would like. Sorry, I've gone too far. So the main thing to take from this slide is it's not so much about the values, it's more about how they're implemented. But if you implement them right, it will be a game changer in terms of how your department behaves. If I just talk about why I chose these, actually, accountability, what I was trying to do was get people to own their mistakes and correct them and learn from them rather than hide them. And also ensure that people knew what their job descriptions were. It was amazing that so many people had job descriptions, but they changed roles and hadn't had them updated. So once they had an updated job description, they knew their purpose, they knew what they were accountable for. So then it was just getting them to own that role. Communication I did purely to get people to actually speak to each other rather than email. So we were all in one office, but a lot of people were emailing someone that's just a couple of feet away from them. And of course, they were doing that to other departments rather than speaking to other departments. Continuous improvement was to get us out of the cycle of firefighting and actually trying to change the way we were doing things for the better, to work smarter and not harder, that famous phrase. Develop knowledge was a key one, because what we wanted to do was develop an individual to learn more, which meant they could do more. And therefore, if there was a promotion opportunity, then they could have that. And we did do a lot of internal promotions, which helped with their career development. It kept them motivated and it helped with staff retention. But it also helped with succession planning. So obviously I knew I was going to have a bit of a turnover at the beginning, and I knew there'd be a gap. So what I got everybody to do was share knowledge, so that when one person left the business, there was someone that could pick up that work until we got a replacement. Professional was just about respect, really, and speaking to people with respect and avoiding examples like I gave earlier when I asked that person that question. And then the last one was proactive. And again, that was more about people planning and being organised and getting out of the firefighting culture that sometimes accounts departments get themselves in. But just to ask the question, I can't actually see everybody, but I think, Louise, are you able to put a hand up in Zoom? I don't know if you can, or whether you have to do it physically. I think you have to do it physically, but I'm just going to ask the question, and if everybody could kind of put a hand up or a thumbs up or a thumbs down. But the question is, whom have values that are actively implemented in your organisation and actually part of your culture? So no, the question is not, do you have values? It's, are those values actually part of the culture and you live and breathe them. And the people that I see, I can't see anyone putting their hand up. I saw one thumbs up. Two. Oh, there's a few. There's a few. So that's interesting. So that is something I would definitely say is get values into your culture. And where I'm working now, they've now introduced values, and it's starting to be part of how we live and breathe, and it's starting to make a difference as well, particularly with working from home. So that's values, and then the next thing I'm going to talk about is restructuring to change the perception of the finance department and become value adding. So this was a different organisation, and what we had was a bit of an us and them culture. So here is the finance department. They come up with policies, procedures, and a lot of red tape. And every time you want to do something, it feels like finance are in the way. So we were kind of like the lawmakers, if you like. We were the people that would police all of this. And therefore, that's how we ended up with this us and them culture. And at the time, it was absolutely right, because the business was on the verge of going bust. It was struggling. So a lot of tight controls were brought in, but the relationship wasn't good. So what I did was it wasn't that big an exercise, but it had quite a big impact, was change people's job titles and roles. So the management accountant became finance business partners. The financial controller became senior finance business partner, and accounts assistants became assistants business partners. So that was step one. And straight away, just from the name change, the outside department suddenly saw us more of trying to engage with the business. And what it did for the actual people, the management accountants who became finance business partners, it gave an opportunity for development, but also, instead of just producing the numbers, they were actually turning those numbers into business ideas, because it was quite a commercial environment, from which they could then feed that back to the department managers and say, look, this is how we think we can make more money. This is how I can support you with it. What do you think? We also got the finance business partners to get the input from the departments on what the policies and procedures should be, whilst maintaining financial robustness. And what that meant was that we came up with policies which actually worked from an operational point of view, and meant things could happen quite quickly with less red tape. The other part of this was we relocated the team. So for about 2 to 3 weeks of the month, the finance business partners would sit within the department that they were supporting, rather than sitting within the finance team. And then 1 to 2 weeks of the month, they would then come back at key points, like month end, when it was important that everybody in finance was together. That worked really well. It enabled us to engage with the business and communicate much better. And of course, when we were doing this, we did engage the business to say, look, this is what we're going to do. Do you think it's a good idea? Give us your ideas. And we've done this from a senior level all the way down. And that actually worked and allowed us to create a culture that wasn't so much us and them. Just going to quickly look at questions. Yes, we can provide copies of the slides, someone's asked. And then the final piece that I'm going to come on to, as I say, is a really small, a very, very small example, but it was eye-opening for me. So this is going back to the business where there was a lot of problems internally that I then became in charge of. There was one global business in Brazil. So we just opened an office in Brazil. It was becoming very lucrative there, and we just took on a financial controller. And he'd been there about 3 to 6 months, but he just wasn't performing. He didn't seem to understand what he should be doing, which I think was our fault due to training. But he wasn't meeting deadlines. He was not replying to emails very quickly. And it just wasn't working at all. And we were on the verge of managing him out of the business, but we thought, well, part of it is he doesn't seem to know what he's doing, and the training hasn't been that great. So we sent someone out there for 2 weeks to train him. And this was like last chance saloon. But that training didn't really happen. And the reason the training didn't really happen is because every time the guy we sent over there to do the training was trying to train this financial controller, literally every hour someone would come in with a HR issue, an operational issue, just some sort of issue that would show that there was just a lack of support for this finance guy who was there to do finance, not HR and operations. And then we quickly sorted that by engaging the senior leaders and managing director to get him the support he needed. Now, since then, he's grown the department to, I think when I left, to 5. He's always getting his work in on time. He's developed the accounts to a level of excellence, and he's soon online to be promoted to the FD. And I guess the reason I give that example is if you're in a business where you're operating from the UK, but you've got departments that report to you from global locations, the question is, do you really understand the cultural and operational challenges? And it might be you have lots of calls with these people and they tell you what's going on, but how much do you really understand what that's like? So that's why I've just put here, seeing is believing. If you ever get the chance and your business allows you to, or if it's something you can request, then I'd just say, please do go out and visit that site, because it is amazing how many people get into this comfort zone of just managing departments globally without actually going out there and seeing exactly what the issues and challenges they have, which sometimes are so completely different to the UK, as you can imagine, in areas such as Brazil, and I've also managed departments in Middle East and Africa, so they're very different. So that would be, that's just a bit of experience that I'm sharing there. Which kind of brings me to the end of the slide, and at the end of my presentation. And if anyone has some questions, please do ask, and yes, we'll share these slides. I'm glad to say I've got through the presentation and my puppy hasn't assumed the squat position as well, so that's good. So over to you, Louis. Thanks everybody for listening.
That's great. Thank you, Mark. That's some really interesting points there. I'm sure everybody would agree. For anybody that would like to be introduced directly to Mark to pose some questions to the group, or to Mark directly, or would like to raise points of own interest or share some of their own experiences, that would be very welcome to make this more of a collaborative session. So if you'd like to do that by initiating your question in the chat box, that would be great. Or as Mark indicated earlier on, if you want to put your hand up, he'll probably be able to see you. So yeah, I'd rather you guys had the floor as opposed to me talking. So I'm going to leave it to you now, and please put any discussion points up for general discussion. Thank you. At this stage, did you have anything else that you wanted to add, Mark?
No, I just hope there's just one piece. If there's just one piece that one person can take from that, and it helps them either now or in the future, then that's my tip for the day. Really, is just to share experience, and hopefully it'll help someone in some of the challenges they may face in managing departments. Yeah, no, that's great. Thank you. As with all of these sessions, we do promote the Guild app that we have, which is a professional forum for finance directors and CFOs to be able to continue these types of discussions, raise questions, or share information. And Christiane will send round the link for the Guild app, so that if you haven't already joined, I think there's between 700 and 800 finance directors and CFOs on that platform at the moment. So it's quite active and very current in terms of topical issues that are being discussed, and can be very helpful. Sorry, Louis, I've just seen a question from David in the chat, who said, did you reassign tasks within the department? I didn't, David. The reason being, I've seen something similar done in another organisation. Well, I wasn't in charge, someone reassigned tasks. And the reason I didn't do it is because often the reason you reassign tasks can sometimes be because someone cannot do that job. And so you're like, oh, okay, let's take that and give it to someone else. But the problem is often people within the department will know that that's why you're doing that. And that in turn can then create a bit of toxic feeling in terms of, oh, well, why are we keeping them if they can't do that job? Then, you know, we shouldn't be taking on their job for them for something that they're failing. But that said, there's no harm in reassigning tasks if actually it's more to do with development and promotion opportunities.
That's great, thank you. And I see Sarah's added some feedback, yeah, in line with what you were talking about, Mark. And I think Julian has a question for you.
Yeah, let me read that. Have any of your restructures involve implementing new accounting software to support you and allowing team members to add value? So, funnily enough, just as I left that place that I was talking about, they implemented or are implementing a new system, which was one of the main things we desperately needed. But I've not done a restructure involving implementing a new system, but where I'm working now, we've literally just implemented a new system, and we've done phase one of changing to the new system, and now we're doing phase two, which is more about how we use all of the system's functionality to bring in efficiencies to change the business. So yes, we have done it, but not as part of a restructure. But if you wanted to message me about any specific questions about implementing the system leading up to it or doing it, I'd be more than happy to.
So Mark, can I just jump in there? So I've been through a restructure, and my next phase is the new system, which is currently being built. And it's very much about the buy-in and having a new system to support the new team and give them the opportunity to move forward with a better system to enable them to provide a better service to the business. So yeah, very much only doing it because the current system isn't fit for purpose, but also it's joining the team together on a big activity that they can do, and the output is on their shoulders, but it's going to make their jobs easier and give us better information to run the business on. Yeah,
no, you're absolutely right, Sarah, both within the finance department, but also if it's a system that impacts the whole business, then getting other departments engaged. And another reason it's so important to get that early engagement is because the chances are when it comes to system testing, it's going to be those people that you get engaged that are going to have to do all of that numbing testing and making sure everything flows through to the back end. So getting that early engagement to make sure that this testing is successful is absolutely critical. And that's what we've just been through, and we got them engaged, got them to do the testing, and touch wood, so far it looks like it's been a success.
I think it's also because people get scared that if you put in a new system, it's going to be more efficient. And so what does that mean for my role? But actually it's helping them understand, actually, you can do more interesting things, take away all that transactional, give that to the system, and your job then progresses.
Yeah, absolutely right, Sarah. And it's all about how you sell that message, isn't it? You know, it can lead to development opportunities because your department's not going to be grinded down by the things that take time. You can actually get engaged with developing further and hopefully their career as well. So yeah, no, you're absolutely right, Sarah.
Thank you,
Ian.
both. Thanks.
No problem, Julian. I see Ian's raised his hand. Hi, Ian.
Yeah, hi, Mark. Thanks for that. Really resonated on many levels, especially the visiting your colleagues in other offices, which I haven't done for the last couple of years, mostly for obvious reasons. But I'm realising the absolute necessity to do so. I just had a thought. Did you, when you set out your sort of restructure plans, did you state those goals? You talked about reducing month-end close periods, that sort of thing. Did you state that in advance, and did you co-create that with the team to sort of get buy-in there, or just evolve sort of organically?
Yeah, no. So when we had that meeting off-site, it was all about why we're changing, but it was also what that would look like. So they were part of the journey and knew what that end goal was going to be, because what we also did was KPIs, which we went through in all of the monthly finance meetings. So one goal was to get from 10 working days down to 6 working days. Another was to reduce debtors. There was so many different elements, whether it would be credit control, purchase ledger, management accountants. Everybody had their own goal to show that improvement, and then we had the KPIs so that they could see that over the months. So to answer your question, yes, that was set out at the beginning, so they knew what they were trying to achieve and what their purpose was and why it was so important that we changed.
Thanks.
I think there's some other questions in the chat, I think. What is the biggest resistance to change within the team? Funnily enough, I didn't have it in this particular restructure, but I've found from the past that a change in the system, and I've got to word this very carefully, but the more senior members of the team are sometimes scared of technology and don't embrace it as well as someone fresh out of college that hasn't used the system. So that's sometimes the biggest resistance to change, and not getting that initial buy-in. So there was one chap who had been there for eight years and seen many financial controllers and FDs come and go. And they'd all brought their own ideas. So by the time I came along, it was like, oh, not another one. But the only thing that did help was that I was the first one to take them all off site and actually listen to them. And no one had ever done that before. I actually got them to be vocal about what their issues are and frustrations are. And I think I've answered all questions now, I think.
Okay, that's great. Thank you, Mark. So as I say, if anybody does subsequently have anything that they would like to discuss, yes, it's worth putting it in the guild on the guild platform to get some feedback from that. I'd just like to say thank you to everybody who's been able to join today, and a really big thank you to Mark for investing his time in sharing your own experiences with us all today. And we've had some really good feedback in terms of the value that's been able to give to the people that have joined. So thank you very much, Mark. We'll keep you all informed as to the next virtual boardroom and the presentation. I don't want to cut anybody off if you are going to raise a question, but I think that, are you happy, Mark, that I think we've covered sort of most of the points today? Yeah,
no, it's absolutely fine. And if anyone wants to get in touch on LinkedIn, I'm more than happy to support fellow colleagues with anything, whether it's this or system implementation. So yeah, feel free to reach out or just connect.
That's brilliant. Thank you so much.
I was just going to add, Lois, if anybody here that was listening wanted to get involved and do a presentation for us, we're always on the lookout, aren't we, for guest speakers who potentially have a topic that they'd like to share. So please do get in touch with either myself or Lois if you do have anything in mind that you feel you'd like to share with everybody.
Good point, Emily.
Thank you.
Seconded. Thank you all. Do take care and bye for now.
Thanks for your time all.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.